Inside of the walls of Buchenwald Concentration Camp, as the Second World War came to an end, there were a couple of prisoners who were awaiting their date with the executioner. The pair had been held for some time inside one of the toughest camps of them all, but these were not ordinary prisoners. These were men who had been the commandants of concentration camps themselves. One of them was Karl Otto Koch, who had been the commandant of the very site, Buchenwald, where he was being locked up and held. He was accused of stealing money from the Nazi coffers and of embezzlement, but inside the cells with him was another former commandant of a concentration camp, who had also been convicted of embezzlement, as well as the murder of prisoner witnesses to his crimes. Arthur Hermann Florstedt was the third commandant of the deadly Majdanek site, where thousands of people were driven into the gas chambers, but following being relieved of command, he was actually sentenced to death for bringing Heinrich Himmler's horrific organisation, the SS, into alleged disrepute. But the events of his execution are interesting, as the execution of Florstedt was confirmed by the SS hierarchy. But how was the ruthless Commandant of Majdanek executed? Welcome to the Untold Past. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Hermann Florstedt was born on the 18th of February 1895, and he was raised in the border regions of Germany and France. In 1933, with Adolf Hitler becoming Chancellor, Florstedt joined the Nazi Party like so many people did inside of the country. Hitler promised to rebuild Germany and to make it a power once again on the European stage, following the capitulation of the First World War and the humiliation of the Treaty of Versailles that made Germany accept blame for the war. The treaty also limited the country heavily. For example, their army was restricted to just 100,000 soldiers. Hitler would rip this piece of paper up, and he would rebuild his forces heavily, and because of his speeches and words, many people supported him. Florstedt in 1933 also joined the SS, the Schutzstaffel, Heinrich Himmler's paramilitary group, who were growing heavily in their numbers. The SS began as a small bodyguard unit and detachment that would protect Hitler whilst he was speaking at political rallies, but they would become one of the most feared groups in history, and during the Second World War, they had the blood of millions of people on their hands, as they served as the guards of the concentration camps, and also within the SS was the Einsatzgruppe, the death squads, who ruthlessly shot millions of civilians, following advancements by the German army. Florstedt began to rise through the ranks of the SS, and he was part of the Death Heads unit, and rather than being involved in the Waffen-SS during the Second World War, the military wing of the group, he was sent to go and work inside of the concentration camps. Specifically, he was sent to Sachsenhausen to work from 1940 until 1942. This was a camp which saw 200,000 prisoners pass through the barbed wire fences, and around 50,000 of them died inside due to the gas chambers, the medical experiments, executions, and the conditions that the inmates were kept in. A number of high-profile prisoners, such as the son of Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator, perished inside of Sachsenhausen. The conditions of the camp were horrific, as prisoners were kept in a constant state of starvation. They were forced to conduct back-breaking work. Executions were also very common there, as firing squads were regularly seen shooting victims, and the sound of gunshots could be heard constantly. For example, in 1941, over 10,000 Soviet POWs were shot in Sachsenhausen. There were many sets of gallows made, and hangings took place in the roll call yards daily. The prisoners of Sachsenhausen could not escape the terror, as execution continued, and also torture was administered by the guards. Guards such as Florstedt forced inmates into performing exhausting exercises, aimed to cause a huge amount of pain, and medieval-style torture methods such as the scripado, in which a prisoner was suspended in the air by their arms, was used. Hermann Florstedt must have attracted a significant amount of praise inside of the camps, as after just working inside of Sachsenhausen for 2 years, he was selected to work as the Commandant of the Majdanek extermination and concentration camp found in Poland. He replaced SS Sturmbannführer Max Kogel. Majdanek concentration camp was found in Lublin, and 2,000 Soviet prisoners of war arrived to construct the site, but they were all killed by the overwork and the lack of food given. It was a camp which had the sole intention of slaughtering as many people as possible, and it was part of Operation Reinhardt, the destruction of the Jewish population of Poland. And Majdanek had 7 different gas chambers, as well as 2 wooden gallows for executions, and it was one of the largest sites of the Third Reich. It was Hermann Florstedt's job to oversee the killing operations, and during his time in charge, a huge number of people were sent to the camp to be exterminated. The prisoners were gassed in plain view of other prisoners, and there was no secret as to what was actually happening, and it was under Florstedt's command that these gassings began, and Zyklon B was used to slaughter roughly dozens of thousands of people inside of Majdanek's gas chambers, and in total it's believed that at least 78,000 people were killed at the camp. The victims were driven into the gas chambers, then following their deaths their bodies were burned inside of the crematoria, or if there were too many people killed and the crematoria could not keep up, then the bodies were just burned in the open. Every day the smoke coming from the ovens that were burning the bodies was seen billowing over the local area. It was a place where in one deadly day, roughly 18,500 people were slaughtered in what was known as Operation Harvest Festival. Majdanek also became a place where much of the property of those who were sent to the extermination camps was sorted. Hermann Florstedt, as the commandant of the camp, was seen as a man who was ultimately responsible for setting the tone with the guards and also running the site on a daily basis. But he could not keep his hands to himself, and because Majdanek was this large sorting site, Florstedt was known for stealing a lot of valuables and wealth that was being sorted here, and he personally stole many items from the victims of the Holocaust. This was a crime inside of Nazi Germany, as all confiscated property was said to have belonged to the Nazis and to be sent back for processing in Germany, making Hitler and the Reich richer. With Florstedt stealing and embezzling money from the victims of the Holocaust, he was in turn stealing from the pockets of Hitler. He had access to gold, money and other items of jewellery, as well as huge amounts of clothing brought to the camp by the victims of it. He was reported to the SS for this, and was then investigated by SS Judge George Conrad Morgan for his crimes, and he was said to have brought the SS into disrepute. He was fired from his position as a Commandant of Majdanek in October 1943, and was charged with theft, embezzlement, and also in the murder of witnesses to his crimes. He was at his trial also investigated for having a possible affair with the wife of the Commandant of Buchenwald, the notorious woman and female guard, Ilse Koch. He was for his actions sentenced to death, and interestingly Karl Otto Koch, the Commandant of Buchenwald, the husband of Ilse, was also subjected to the same fate. Hermann Florstedt was then sent to prison to await his death sentence, and he was kept alive for a number of years, probably as a death warrant had not been signed, and Himmler was probably hesitant to order the execution of a man who he placed a huge amount of trust in. But at the end of the Second World War, Heinrich Himmler did not want a single prisoner to fall into the hands of the Allies, and this included Hermann Florstedt. He was sent with Karl Otto Koch to Buchenwald Concentration Camp to await their executions. It is known that the executions did take place, as confirmation was sent back to the SS hierarchy regarding this, and it is most probable that Hermann Florstedt, along with Karl Otto Koch, was executed together inside the walls of Buchenwald, which was approaching its last few days in operation. The order to execute Florstedt must have been given from the SS hierarchy, and the most probable cause of action was that he was executed in the same manner as Karl Otto Koch, by an executioner or by a firing squad. He would have been led out to a firing range, or more likely into a sheltered courtyard where not many people could see. At this time in the war, there would have been a strain on resources to gather together a quick firing squad made up of a number of soldiers, so it is likely that Hermann Florstedt's executioner was actually one SS senior guard armed with a pistol. If a firing squad had been gathered, they would have been ordered to shoot into the prisoner, the former Commandant of Majdanek, very quickly. Following the execution being carried out, as mentioned, confirmation regarding Karl Otto Koch's execution was sent, but the crematoria inside of Buchenwald had stopped working days before that the executions were carried out, meaning that the bodies of Florstedt and Karl Otto Koch were most probably taken elsewhere to be disposed of, and this does lead to the possibility that they were actually buried somewhere in a pit, and that the bodies of these two men, some of the worst Nazi war criminals in history, do still exist today on this earth. Hermann Florstedt was a brutal and barbaric guard of the concentration camps, who rose to the position as the Commandant of Majdanek, an extermination facility in which dozens of thousands of people were driven into the gas chambers. The crimes of Majdanek were not a secret, as each day smoke billowed from the chimneys, and Hermann Florstedt was a man who was trusted by Heinrich Himmler to maintain the slaughter and the executions within the camp. But he was then arrested by his own organisation for the fact he was caught stealing valuables from the prisoners, which actually meant he was stealing from the Nazi Party and from the pockets of Hitler. For his crimes, the SS sentenced him to death, and it's most probable that Hermann Florstedt was executed on roughly the 5th of April 1945 alongside Karl Otto Koch, before or after him by gunshot, and either a sole executioner with a pistol or a hastily gathered firing squad did the job. He was a man who had the blood of thousands of people on his hands, and if he had survived the Second World War, then he would most certainly have been sent to the gallows for his own execution, as he was a terrible war criminal. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.